Had a vasectomy years back and now my wife is pregnant. I know the child isn't mine. We spent 2 years together in college and got married the fall after we graduated. Spent 2 years exploring our relationship and finally got settled down and was ready to raise a family. She got off birth control and her libido took off, but it took 3 years for us to get pregnant. But we got a beautiful girl finally. After a couple of months, my wife got back on birth control and had a hard time with it. Her doctor switched her meds several times, but she had bad side effects with each one. We talked about it and were unsure if we wanted another child, and since it was easier for me to get a vasectomy reversed later if we decided to have more children, I had the operation. That was 3 years ago, and after coming off birth control my wife has felt better, and sex has been worry-free since we can no longer get pregnant. We actually have sex more now than when we were in college. Then 3 weeks ago my wife was late for her period, which isn't that unusual for her. Then I noticed her breasts were a little tender and she started what seemed like signs of morning sickness. Now I know there have been cases of nature reversing vasectomies, so I went to the doctor and had my sperm count checked and the verdict was, I'm still sterile. But I didn't tell my wife. My wife finally went to her doctor and confirmed she was pregnant, and so she had me go to my doctor to get tested. I didn't go right away because I was literally sick from the stress of the situation. I had all sorts of sick scenarios going through my head. In the end I got retested and I took my daughter in and had a DNA test done. I got both test results back today and got violently ill after reading them. Yes, I am sterile. And no, my daughter isn't mine. When my wife got home I showed her my test, and she denied any wrongdoing, and saying that there was a problem with the test, and I showed her the test from last week and she broke down crying. I finally got it out of her who she had slept with, and that it only happened once and the condom must have failed. I made her tell me the story 3 times, and each time I asked her if that was the whole truth, and if there was anything else that she needed to tell me because another lie would mean we were through. She said that was the only time, and she had never done anything like that before. I told her how much this hurt me, and asked her how she could do this to our family and if it was worth it. I asked her if she wanted a divorce, and she pleaded with me to forgive her and put this behind us. I said I couldn't raise someone else's child and asked her if she would be willing to terminate the pregnancy in order to stay together. She cried the rest of the night, but when we went to bed, she said she would do whatever it took to save our marriage. I never brought up the DNA test. I will contact a lawyer next week to see what my options are about if I have to pay child support on our first child. If she had come clean about the father of our first child, I could have swallowed my pride and tried to work to forgive her, but she thought she was in the clear and didn't need to confess to anything else. No telling what I'll never know. Lawyer update? My lawyer is awesome. She had me bring in a bunch of paperwork, bank statements, and my medical and DNA results and had me tell her my story. Her assistant sat in with us and took notes while my lawyer went through my documents. After I finished, she asked a few questions and spelled out my options. I live in an at-fault state, which is good and bad. Good as in it gives us leverage, bad as it takes longer and much more expensive. In the case of the first child, if my wife agrees to sign the papers, my liability for child support is an easy fix. If she doesn't agree, then a court-ordered DNA test and a judgment from the court can remove me without my wife's consent. Either way, I will most likely not have to pay child support. One way is just more expensive than the other. Since my wife has a good job and earns close to what I do, she didn't think the judge would award her any alimony. And all of that plus dividing up property and other things can be negotiated before a judge gets involved. The bad news was due to the holidays they couldn't have the papers ready before Christmas, but definitely would before the end of the year. She advised me to say nothing until she got served. She gave me a list of things to do before and after Christmas before they served my wife. One thing they did point out was, since we were actively trying to have a baby, there was a possibility that my wife didn't know that the child wasn't mine. My wife has an appointment with her OB tomorrow. Update? So I met my sister at my house and we started moving my stuff to her house while the divorce goes through, or at least until my STBXW leaves and I get possession of the house. We took 4 carloads to her house and came back for the rest. My sister felt it important for her to be there for support and as a witness. I also moved the nanny cam into the living room so it could record everything in the cloud. At about 10:45 a.m., I got a text from the lawyer saying she had been served. I sent her an email saying that I am at the house when she is ready to talk. A couple of minutes later I got a text from my wife saying why? Blah blah blah. So I resent the first text and waited for her to get home. She sent several texts and voicemails. They don't mention anything about cheating, just how she thought we were working this out, and she thought we would sit down and have a conversation before proceeding with the divorce. Playing the family card, and how this will devastate the child and our families. How she feels betrayed, that was a good one. She was still sharing her location, and it took her 20 minutes before she left work. She then stopped at a nearby Walgreens for a few minutes. The purpose of the stop at Walgreens became clear as a police car pulled in behind her in the driveway. According to the officers, she got the police there because she said she was afraid and that we had guns in the house. I showed the officers my empty gun safe and said that I had removed them to another secure location. We went back to the living room, and I showed my wife the paternity test that I had done that showed her daughter was not mine. Her response was denial and disbelief, which appeared genuine. She broke down and cried for about 10 minutes. I told her this was the final straw and why I wanted the divorce. At about that time, the police officers reminded me to keep it civil and made their exit after I told them I was leaving soon to stay at my sister's house. When I asked who the child's father was, she claimed she didn't know. I asked if there were that many guys she was sleeping with, or did she just not know his name? I asked how many times had she cheated on me between pregnancies, to which she said it was just the 2 of them. I told her that I had said earlier if she didn't tell the whole truth that I was done. I reminded her I also told her that I wouldn't raise someone else's child, and that she had better figure out who the real father was because I wasn't paying child support for someone else's baby. She wanted to know what we were going to tell our daughter, and I said that was up to her because this was her mess and I wasn't taking the blame or cleaning it up for her. I drafted a couple of emails last week, one for our friends and family with copies of all the test results and reasons why I was asking for a divorce, the other for my wife with copies of the same tests along with what I knew and things that I had told her previously. I had to run it through my lawyer and make a couple of edits before she signed off on it. I sent copies to all our friends and relatives when she pulled into the driveway this afternoon. Most of the feedback has been one-sided and very colorful. In the end, I told her if she had been truthful we might have been able to work things out. But I couldn't trust a lying serial cheater. And I told her if she had been truthful, had gotten her tubes tied instead of me getting a vasectomy, she might have got away with it. I told her she needed to get a lawyer so we could move forward and start to heal. Final update from OP as of 7 months ago. We had our second meeting with the lawyers today and we signed off on almost everything except the house, still waiting for an appraisal to come back and figure out the split. Motions got filed today, and a court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for all 3 of us. Since STBXW didn't fight me on everything, we filed a no-fault divorce petition. If everything goes right, I get the house back on February 15th, and the divorce will be final on April 5th. The lawyers did a better job keeping us separated and the conversation between the 2 of us to a minimum. I was a little worried when she came in, pale and with no energy to speak of. I couldn't tell if it was lack of sleep or maybe over-medicated. She just stared out the windows as the lawyers read everything to us before we signed some of the papers. Walking out felt like I had shed a giant weight from around my neck. HR got me signed up for therapy tomorrow. My boss had put a bottle of champagne on my desk, offered me some time off if I needed it, but I told him I was excited to get back to work. And now it's time for another story. Story 2. Her makeup gave her away. I, 31M, have been married to Lucy, 30F, for over 3 years, perfectly happy, or so I thought. I treated her to a makeover for her last birthday and I guess that was about when things started to change, or at least when I noticed it. My wife has 3 makeup looks: a quick errand running look, an office look 15 to 20 minutes, and a date/event look 30 to 45 minutes. When we were dating, all I saw was the date look and she was quite stunning. Most of the time she is in the office look unless we go out, then I get the date look, and the weekend is usually in errand mode. This is what tipped me off that something was amiss. She started wearing her date look to work once a week and then sometimes when she would go out shopping on the weekend. I commented on it one night and she said she only did it on special days when they took them out to lunch or had meetings with clients. I noticed that on days when she dressed up she tended to be late coming home, usually with the excuse of having to work on a project. A couple of weeks ago I took her car down to get the oil changed and stopped on the way home and ran it through the car wash. I decided to give a good vacuuming while I was there. I was cleaning the trunk when I noticed a small bag off to the side. Inside was her toiletries and makeup plus some clothes. At first I assumed it was her gym bag, but there was a lingerie set in there, used/dirty, and my heart sank. I didn't say anything when I got home and started doing some chores around the house trying to make sense of it all. I finally got an eye tag off one of our suitcases and put deep down into a pocket on her bag in the trunk. My work wife Susan has become one of my wife's close friends and we talk about almost everything, including things you shouldn't share with your coworkers of the opposite sex. I told Susan about the change in Lucy's makeup habits and her working late. I asked Susan if she thought Lucy could be stepping out on me. Susan's denial was swift and absolute, that Lucy wasn't cheating on me and she was just doing it because it gave her more self-confidence. Susan has a nervous tell when she is stressed about something, and after working with her for 8 years I knew she was not being truthful. I did not tell her about finding the bag in Lucy's trunk. A couple of days later Lucy got in the shower with me and started playing with me, and after we got out, she gave me a BJ. I get a BJ from my wife on my birthday, anniversary, and around Christmas, and that's it. So now my head is spinning and I check the bag in the trunk and it has fresh clothes and a different piece of lingerie in it as well. Saturday morning Lucy says she is going shopping and grabbing lunch at the mall. I told her give me a second and I will go with you. She said she is shopping for clothes and she knows how I hate that, but I said I don't mind getting to spend extra time with her and I might look for a new dress shirt while I'm there and could use her opinion. She was clearly aggravated, but I was persistent and we went shopping. The next week I put a note in the bag, "Come home, I know." Thursday she was acting different and I asked if she would be home on time and she wasn't sure, but she would call me if it looked like she might have to stay late. At 2 p.m. I saw her location had changed and was moving away from the house. I tried to call her but it went to voicemail and I got a text she was in a meeting and would call me later. I sent her one back and said I was in the neighborhood and thought I would bring her a snack and a latte. The iTag now shows her heading back to the office. I picked up her latte and a sticky bun and got to her office in time to see her run in the door. I found her in her office and dropped off the latte and said I would see her at home later. By 3 p.m. she heading away from her office in the same direction as before. I sent her a text saying "I love you" with a big heart emoji. A couple of minutes later she sent me a "me too" reply. The bag stopped moving and after about 10 minutes I tried to FaceTime her but she didn't pick up. Shortly she is blowing up my phone but I didn't answer and texts asking me to please pick up the phone. She got home and asked me how long have I known. I told her I wondered when she started changing up her makeup routine but wasn't sure until a couple of weeks ago when I found the bag in the trunk. I told her to tell Susan she was a bad liar. I said the divorce will be friendly and she could then have her new lover without me in the way. She asked if there was some way I could forgive her and not get a divorce. I asked her for the whole truth, how long and with whom she had been cheating with. She said for a couple of months and asked me why did it matter who it was. I said I didn't want to accidentally shake the hand of the man that ruined my marriage. She finally told me it was a co-worker and his name. I made her call him and hand me the phone. I introduced myself and said I know everything. Best confess to your wife before she finds out from me, and I hung up. I told Lucy she needed to block him and cut all contact and she said she has to work with him and that would be impossible. I said I can't see any way this can work if you don't. My wife is still adamant that we can get past this but is yet to talk about why this happened in the first place. I feel shell-shocked and while I don't want to get divorced I can't imagine a way forward. Update. Busy morning. I had a good chat with the lawyer this morning. He gave me some advice and gave me a worksheet to fill out and a list of do's and don'ts. We have a longer meeting scheduled for Friday but he will start the paperwork today. He told me that informing the other wife may come back to bite me. He was right. At work, my boss hit me with a short list for Susan's replacement that I have to interview and make a decision on as soon as possible. A long email from Susan apologizing for everything and wanting to meet me for lunch to talk. My boss hasn't said anything but the rumor mill is going crazy about Susan getting kicked off my team and the amount of ass kissing around me is ridiculous. Lucy got called into HR before lunch and has been put on a PIP. Seems her AP turned in his resignation this morning and in an exit interview threw Lucy under the bus. He said they had been having an affair on company time. She is terrified she is going to get fired now. If she gets fired it will change the terms of the divorce, so the lawyer was right about it biting me. As far as the accolades for my being calm and handling this so well, I should say I have lost 7 pounds in the last week and nothing I eat stays in me very long. I don't sleep more than 3 hours at a time and I'm worried when I have to drive. I've called my doctor and he prescribed me something to help me sleep but he wants to see me tomorrow and run some tests, including an STD screen. Lucy and I are sleeping in separate rooms. I haven't mentioned divorce yet and we have a couples therapist we are seeing Monday afternoon. Update. Lots to unpack, so I'll try to be brief. Sunday dinner with Lucy's parents. They are very conservative. Towards the end of dinner she said we are going to counseling because she got caught cheating with a coworker. Dad grilled her at the dinner table and later yelled at her while behind closed doors. Lucy cried most of the way home saying that her dad now hated her. Since then all communication from her mom has been through Lucy's sister. Therapy. For me it was like taking a test you had all the answers to and already knew your grade. Lucy finally gave a timeline of the affair. Then I got to ask some questions. Did she do anal? How many times did she blow him? Since it was always rationed for me. How many times did they meet? Did she use condoms? How many times did I get sloppy seconds? Was he bigger than me? Who knew? Did they trash talk me when they were fucking? Did she lick his ass? There were others but you get the idea. I didn't give her answers, because I couldn't believe anything she says now. I got a chance to tell Lucy how I felt and we talked about a few things she needed to do, like confess to both our parents about what she did. Our therapist talked about what we needed to do going forward and gave us advice about what we needed to think about before our next session. But that was about the extent of what we talked about before we ran out of time. I will say one thing positive, she never blamed me for the affair or said I wasn't fulfilling her needs forcing her to seek them elsewhere. The FaceTime with my parents went great compared to hers. They were both pretty stoic when she told them. My dad did say he was very disappointed in her decision making. That's as close as my dad gets to calling someone the W word. I told a few of our friends the details. I made sure that a couple of them were the type to do the work for me. Lucy has been beside herself answering questions coming in from all our friends. She has made me some ludicrous offers, an open-ended hall pass, opening the marriage, and other sexual favors. I told her 2 wrongs don't make it right, and I wasn't the one that wanted an open marriage. Tomorrow is Thursday, D-Day, and she gets served her divorce papers around 9 a.m. What I wouldn't give to have a video of her getting served and seeing the look on her face. Why isn't that a service the process servers offer? Update. Recap. I caught my wife Lucy having an affair with a married coworker. I put a note in her go bag saying come home, I know. She got home and confessed to seeing him for over 2 months and begged for forgiveness. She said she would do anything to stay together. I made her call him and hand me the phone. I introduced myself and said I know everything. Best confess to your wife before she finds out from me, and I hung up. I had recorded my wife's confession and sent a copy to his wife. I told Lucy she had to confess to both our parents about what she did. My parents were upset, but her parents practically disowned her. The next day her AP went to work early and turned in his notice. Before leaving he threw my wife under the bus and confessed most of their trysts happened in the afternoons on company time. I met with a lawyer and got divorce proceedings underway. We did go to therapy where I got to ask a lot of uncomfortable questions and let her know how badly she hurt me. Afterward, she made me some ludicrous offers, an open-ended hall pass, opening the marriage, and other sexual favors. I told her 2 wrongs don't make it right, and I wasn't the one that wanted an open marriage. Last Thursday she got served, and I dodged her phone calls all day. I had a neighbor couple with me at the house when she got there, and they were witness to her tantrum. She threw several items at me while yelling and screaming. The police were called and they arrived in time to see her launch a glass at me. After getting the story from all 4 of us, they asked if I wanted to press charges, which I declined. They told her she needed to find someplace other than here to spend the night and walked her in while she packed a bag. Her sister showed up and got her to go home to her apartment. Upon hearing about the events at my house, my lawyer wasted no time in getting a restraining order against my wife. When she got the row, she had a panic attack or a nervous breakdown and had to be taken to the ER, where they kept her until Tuesday morning. Sunday her sister came by the house and packed up the rest of her things and took them back to her place. I asked how Lucy was doing but got nothing from her sister but some attitude. Tuesday morning her lawyer finally reached out to mine and they have meetings scheduled to talk about a settlement. At my lawyer's request, I have an appointment with a therapist he recommended for later in the week. A sincere shout out to several of you who have let me vent and offered encouragement privately.